Hi guys, AJ here coming at you with some more IP, and this week we are up to week 9, and this week we are up to the second of our presentations. And last week we had a little look at a particular area of copyright law, fair dealing and fair use. This week we are looking at some problematic areas in patent law. This week's readings in the notes, you'll see that the topic we have for this week was set as biopiracy. So that's the rather pejorative term given to the exercise of harvesting materials from nature in order to create patentable inventions. And this becomes extraordinarily contentious when you talk about harvesting items from nature, particularly where they are sourced in third world or developing countries. It often, in the media, is boiled down to multinationals roaming the globe to secure the little bits and pieces that they need to create their patentable drugs or genetically modified food, and to charge exorbitant rates for their end products. Obviously, as IP lawyers, we need to think about those kinds of arguments quite carefully, because it's not a case of being able to run over to an impoverished country, grab up your specimens that you need and come back and simply patent whatever it is that you've found. I mean, you can't patent products of nature. As you'll remember from the NRDC case, you have to have an artificially created state of affairs. That means some kind of human intervention, human modification of whatever specimen it is that you've harvested, some kind of human input. And don't also forget that it has to be inventive. So whatever it is that you've done to that originally harvested source item, it has to be non-obvious to the person skilled in the art. So it's going to require a fairly hefty inventive step before it gets across the patentability threshold. So you need to kind of look twice at the media arguments really here, as appealing as they may seem, and particularly where they tend to line up with our gut feel about the rightness of allowing greater access to medicine, greater access to drugs, greater access to food particularly. You need to weigh up the arguments very, very carefully. So the topic this week that I said was centred around the issue of biodiversity, and in particular Australia's international obligations around the issue of biodiversity, how the international community has come together to protect biodiversity, how the international community sees it fit to regulate the exercise of going across to different countries, or indeed in your own country, and harvesting natural materials from which to create patentable inventions. However, this week's presentation is actually on a separate issue, and that is evergreening. You'll see in the notes I also talk about evergreening. And I was happy to approve the change to this particular week's presentation because it kind of sits alongside the notion of biopiracy, if you think about it in one particular way. I mean, biopiracy is the arguments around that are all centered around, whether or not it's right that you should be able to get patent protection for inventions that are originally sourced, their original material was sourced in nature. So it's kind of that fencing off argument. You've got the natural realm here and people are invading onto that and taking away bits and pieces and making money out of it. And that kind of rankles against our sometimes sensitive notions of justice. Here with evergreening, we have the idea of, you know, corporations marching in to ask for patent rights over patented inventions that are very close to the end of their life cycle and should ordinarily fall back into the public domain, become generic, and therefore become much more accessible to a wider number of the population. So it bears similar hallmarks. Biopiracy is about fencing off and denying access in terms of patented inventions that have been sourced originally in nature. And evergreening is all about fencing off and preventing access to drugs that would ordinarily have become much more accessible, or inventions that would have become much more accessible. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to this week's presentation group. I certainly look forward to looking at your presentation, and I believe they are going to be looking at the history and some legislative provisions dealing with evergreening, case laws surrounding evergreening, the impact of evergreening. They're going to give us a little case study, and they'll provide us with a nice smorgasbord, if you will, of opinions on the issue of evergreening. So that's the topic for this week. As always, if you have any queries or questions, please drop me an email or post something up in the forums. And I look forward to speaking with you sometime soon in a Zoom session. Other than that, thanks for watching. Bye, guys.